Noah is the COO of the Dubai Museum of the Future and an advisor on futures, foresight, and innovation for the government. This museum is yet another manifestation of Dubai and the UAE's fascination with the future as something we experience in the present. Importantly, he also says in his biography, if you manage to find it, that he is a techno DJ. We will leave the debate over whether or not techno is the music of the past or the forever soundtrack of the future to another time, preferably late night, somewhere in Germany. Will you please welcome Noah Raford? Thank you.
You guys? Should I sit here? Hello, good afternoon. I would like to share a postcard from 2066 with you. And 2066, as we know, is 50 years from now. So we're going to start with a 50-year story. And this is a story which began with an economic depression, followed by a renaissance in technology and science. But the technology and science advanced faster than policy and government was able to adapt, and it led into an accidental war. The war itself was the result of the depression. The science and technology followed. And after this devastating war, there was a severe global plague, which led to significant social, personal, emotional, and family disruption. In the wake of this disruption, there were new questions asked and new experiments in who we were, who we are, and what we think is possible, and what we think is acceptable to do. This, unfortunately, led to a period of extreme speculation and excess, which again led to an even deeper, more severe crash. The crash had devastating effects on global economies, led to hyperinflation of currencies, a rise of right-wing populism, and powerful totalitarian regimes. Unfortunately, this resulted in another global conflict culminating in a terrible nuclear attack. So, my question for you is, could this happen? Well, actually, this already did happen, because the 50-year period which I just described to you is from 1895 to 1945. And this was the First World War, followed by the Spanish flu, the Russian Revolution, the rise of Dada and existentialism, followed by the Great Depression, the Second World War, and the nuclear bombing of Japan. So during this period, of course, we also saw the invention of the telephone, the automobile, the airplane, movies, the movie camera, radio, the discovery of DNA, of vaccines, and culturally, the introduction of jazz and expressionism, modern art and architecture, film as an art and as a discipline, women's suffrage, labor regulations, and constitutional republics as we now know them. So this is in a period of tremendous transformation. And the point of this story is that in this 50-year period, these kinds of earth-shattering transformations are actually far more frequent and far more profound than we tend to anticipate over a period of 50 years. So this video is showing the transformation of Europe as the countries rise and fall during this 50-year period. So looking back from 2066 of the next 50 years, we can see that as historians of the future, there are five major themes which are likely to drive transformation in the way that electricity, virology, chemistry, physics drove transformation in the period of 1895 to 1945. And these are global challenges, euphemistically called global challenges, so climate disruption, pandemics, social, political, and economic inequality on the one hand, so extreme global stresses. On the other, what we call machinic life, and so this is the fusion of people with machines, and as machines becoming more like people. And programmable biology. So, for example, CRISPR, the Chinese last year were the first to at least publicly admit modifying human embryos using genetic engineering technology, something which has never before been seen in the 4.6 billion years of our planet. Coincidental with these three stresses and opportunities the rise of post-industrial economics, things which aren't necessarily based on this movement of stuff and the exploitation of competitive resources based on capital. And that interfaces very strongly with post-geographic statehood, being of a place but not in that place, or being in that place but not of that place. And what does that mean for citizenship and for identity? So these are 5 themes that we see defining the next 50 years. And I would then like to explore how these might impact 4 different geographies. So I'm going to share with you 4 postcards from 4 different countries, and I'll let you decide where those countries might be. The first of which is what we call the human zoo. So this is an image from the movie WALL-E. And looking back from the year 2066, in a country which is the human zoo, we can see that things began around the next 5 or 10 years as the Internet of Things, quantum computing, rolls out into a powerful substrate for all of our economic and social interactions and leads to a golden age of big data and the decline of human knowledge. We just saw, for example, AlphaGo beat the world's most advanced Go player. Once this rises to prominence, we begin to see the first catastrophic impacts of climate change. And we realize that human beings are not only not able to understand how the world is changing, but not able to control it. So we increasingly invest more and more resources and control into these very powerful artificially intelligent systems. And most governance is then made by and for AI. But of course, because we are the creators of this AI and they're here to serve us, they provide a world of comfort for us, where in which we have very little control. It's run almost entirely by AI algorithms who are there to serve us as consumers. This is a world of highly programmed society where AIs are here as our consumer, let's say personal shoppers, as it were, who manage most of our lives, from our economy to our society, perhaps our family choices. There are very little choices left, and whilst life might be relatively enjoyable for those in there, ultimately we are still denizens of the human zoo. So I will leave you to ask which country might this be? The next country which I would like to visit in 2066 with you is what we call the Silicon Super Society. So this is silicon innovation in the service of humanity, as opposed to humanity in the service of the machine. Very much in the spirit of John F. Kennedy's famous quote, "Do not pray for easy lives, pray to be stronger men," genders issues aside, in this particular 1960s case. So this is the advance of perhaps more severe climate change sooner in the timeline. So these are perhaps areas in Southeast Asia or in East Asia or coastal cities which are affected by climate change sooner and more severe, which leads to both economic and social disruption. Rogue technology from AI to hacking to privacy gets out of control, and the state very much steps in to moderate the excesses of an unregulated environment. This leads to an age of powerful new leaders who invest very strongly in state-run, if you will, socially beneficial moonshots, where machines are in the service of society, leading to a steep and severe re-regulation of technology and the kind of 1960s space technology for us all, ultimately in 2050 leading to the first permanent space colony. So I'll ask you again, which country might this be? Now, we have 2 more countries on our tour. The second to last is Biogardens by the Bay. This is a world of highly regulated biotechnology. So as opposed to a silicon-based society, this is a world where Moore's law begins to peter out slowly. It doesn't quite deliver on the promises in that country that our venture capitalists would have us believe. But at the same time, increasing investment in biotechnology begins to yield extraordinary results. From everything from organic computing to home genetics modification, breakthroughs in ecological systems design leads to extraordinary living cities. But the risks of this in an unregulated world are clear, and so government is again highly engaged in the regulation and administration of the biotechnological world. So most of our basic human needs are met in this country, and we are left to do somewhat similar, like consumeristic modding of our bodies. We re-terraform the devastated post-industrial landscapes, and these modified humans expand into space. So again, a very centralized economy, a very centralized government influence, but one based on biotechnology. Now, lastly, the biotechnological badlands. So where might this be? This is a world where biotechnological breakthroughs come much faster and more furious than anyone ever anticipated. Moore's law is stalling, and in the wake of food crises and protests, we begin to see errant hybrid biological collectives, in which someone might perhaps crack the challenge of hive minds. And the very first person in an unregulated environment that cracks hive minds and becomes super intelligent is able to game the political system, game the economic system, become fabulously wealthy and fabulously powerful, and outcompete others in the economic and political sphere. So these collectives, if you will, these biotech collectives, will be extraordinarily powerful. And there will be most likely warring blocks of them, and success will be most likely biologically determined. This is a highly unregulated, highly competitive, free market biological world, if you will. So, which country might this be? So we've described 4 of these countries based on a silicon world or a biological world where we're more or less in control. And I would just like to leave you with this quote. The future is a foreign country, but which one will it be? And where will we live? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noah. And I'm excited to pre-introduce our next panel, The Future Was Desert Part 2, where you'll get to meet 2 inspiring, amazing, highly quotable women, fresh from trips to the desert in Oman and South Africa, I think. Novelist, comic writer, and filmmaker Lauren Bucas, and artist and writer Sophia Almeria, who will be the person I follow and protect when the apocalypse comes. They'll be in conversation with our amazing Shumon Bassar. The panel is called The Future Was Desert Part 2 because Part 1 took place in January at the ICA in London, where we screened the film that Sophia Maria made for the forum. For those of you who missed that, you'll get a chance to see it now.
Earth, you pretty thing. Let's begin in the end, where the keys to the deep future are kept in your deep past. Before the slimy abiogenesis, before the Cambrian explosion, when all of this was a single continent falling apart. Flash forward 650 million years, give or take 1 million, to this pinprick of a place where a large concentration of time travelers have gathered. Here they are, a row of boys, peni erect, the ghost of an elephant, the silhouette of a fawn, a hand in the darkness, an evil eye, an eland, a mantis queen, a fish god, a Martian. And the sandstone vessel bearing them from then to now is the only human leaving to have traversed such a vast expanse of time. It's a sophisticated mixture: pigment, piss, and animal fat. Now beyond this ancient cavalcade, an archaeologist finds this. It has been waiting buried in earth 27,000 years for this day. The same day that 3 of mitochondrial Eve's youngest are returning home from the moon, straining at gravity's tether. They are seeking purchase on what their 20th century believes to be the future, outer space. While the archaeologist digs into ancient silt, the astronaut leaves soft prints in the virgin lunar dust. What the archaeologist finds, he dedicates to his orbital brothers, calling it Apollo 11. What the astronaut does, he dedicates to all of mankind. A species whose very first leap began in the vicinity of this shadow. This signals the symbolic end, the full stop. Our first markings have managed the journey through time to witness some of the last. But what can lie ahead? This we are particularly skilled at imagining. And the answer lies here, stacked at the same latitude, is the desert called Namib. This is the human future, as seen from the early 21st century. A horror show of blood bags and guzzolene, where the earth is sour and the green place is nothing but a single petrified tree. In this story, popular imagining makes rare coupling with unpopular fact. We have committed planetary suicide. Earth is really dying. Once upon a time, we did not exist, and someday we will cease to again. The absence of us is the only thing that can define the future with any certainty. All that we will leave behind are crude drawings scoured by sand and a tangled knot of fiber optic wire at the bottom of the sea. And all this will say to those who are coming is that for a brief flurry in the incomprehensible abyss of geological time, we were here.
Don't kill the world, don't let her